Nathan, as I keep saying to you, it's about time that we had a guest on the podcast. So do you know anyone?
Well, I've been calling Willem Dafoe, but he's just not calling back, Brenton. I've tried so much.
Well, do you know anyone else?
Well, open the trunk of my car, Brenton.
Oh, that's a bit of a weird request.
Mom?
Nathan, what are you doing putting me in this?
Now dig on this.
Hey, we're here, everyone. Welcome.
Welcome to Classic Movie Banter. You know that show where me, that guy Brenton, and that other guy over there, Nathan,
Hello.
we talk about films that are 20 years or older. 20 years, guys. 20 years. And we tell you whether those films are worth still watching today or whether they're worth taking and using as a certain currency to con other people.
And Brenton, well, what a special episode it is today. Special in the worst of ways, potentially. Because Mother's Day's come and gone, hasn't it, Brenton?
It certainly has. It was actually yesterday here in Australia.
It was.
It certainly was, boys.
And being the cheap son that I am, instead of getting my mother a gift, I gave her instead a voucher, a wonderful voucher to come onto the podcast.
And bring Carol here onto the podcast, otherwise known as Nathan's mum. Hey!
Hey, Mum. How you going?
Hi, boys.
How you doing?
I've been dragged here.
Thanks for coming in. I mean, very much against your will, but you are here today, so that's something.
Against my will, but I'm here through force.
I know. I'm so sorry for tying you up, Mum, but it's the only way.
Can we say how you've been tying me up all my life?
Oh, well, Mum, they can use that in court if you say that on the podcast. So no.
Nathan, you said this was going to be in the worst of ways for you. For me, this might actually be the best of ways.
I really don't want to be here. I really don't want to be here. Why did I agree to this? I immediately hate this.
No, but we do appreciate it for you coming on the podcast today, Carol. And how was your Mother's Day yesterday?
My Mother's Day was great. Nathan bought his usual cup of coffee for me for Mother's Day. The son that keeps on giving.
So I'm not frugal. I go all out, listeners. Just pointing that out. Listeners don't know this, but I every year I hand draw a card for my mum for Mother's Day, and I put my top artistry, don't I, Mum?
You do.
Thank you.
Can we define top artistry?
Or like stick figures that a 4-year-old could probably draw.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now that we've got that out of the way, and we understand the extent of Nathan's artistry, we thought we'd celebrate that special day by bringing Carol on the podcast today and get her to select a film for us to actually watch today.
Mum, what did you choose? What amazing choice did you decide for us to review today?
So today's amazing choice is one of my favourite movies of all time. Well, that's a pretty big definition, but one of my favourite movies, and that's Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Way! But enough about Dad. What's the movie?
But it's not the first one, and it's not the last one. It's the middle one.
Ah, very good.
The middle one. The middle one that was released in 1988 and was directed by Frank Oz.
Yes.
That'd be the one.
Wow.
Hey.
There we go.
Well, how exciting. I'm really excited to talk about this movie today. And Nathan.
Yes.
Without further ado, usually because this is an odd-numbered episode, I would ask you a certain question right now, but I'd like to give you the duties of asking a certain question today because...
Just like my childhood, I'll shove all the work onto my mother. Yeah, Mum, can you please pitch us this movie? Can you pitch me the movie?
Oh, okay. All right. So, yes, of course.
What was that there, son? Speak up.
Sorry about that. Okay. The movie is basically about two con artists working the Riviera and basically talking and convincing wealthy women to part with their money.
But enough about how you and Dad met. What about the movie?
Yeah, so all I can say to you is two great actors, Michael Caine and Steve Martin.
Ooh.
Really, what could go wrong?
Apparently a lot.
Apparently everything. But you know, this sounds intriguing. It sounds like you've got two great performances. But is there a lot of twists and turns in this movie? Do you know? Do we cover a lot of different plot points? Are there different twists and turns? And do the characters end up in a different place than they started out at the beginning of the film?
I think they do. There are a lot of
Right.
twists and turns.
Yeah.
I think the best thing about this movie is the chemistry between Steve Martin and Michael Caine. Michael Caine playing a very straight role, and yet he can do comedy very well. And Steve Martin being his usual Steve Martin self. But they do. Yeah, there's a couple of twists and turns. I think the characters basically stay the same throughout, but there's certainly some good old plot twists through this one.
Oh, Mum, you've got us hooked indeed.
You've got me intrigued. You've got me intrigued. Oh, there we go. That was a good pitch.
Well done,
That was a
Mum.
good pitch. That might have been the best pitch on the show so far.
Wow. I
have
mean,
to
she
say.
didn't have much to beat, did she? Like,
No,
Oh,
no,
yay.
exactly.
yeah. Look, I'm actually
Exactly.
really glad you brought that up, Mum, because like it's very funny you mentioned with the acting with like Steve Martin and Michael Caine, because I feel like Steve Martin just doesn't act. I feel like he just Steve Martins it. You know what I mean?
He does just Steve Martin. He can only do a particular type of, I feel, comedy. And if you love Steve Martin, you love that. And he's always the same in all of his movies. However, I think the fact that the chemistry between him and Michael Caine, it's not just usual Steve Martin sort of slapstick Steve Martin. He's as you know, he's very, very funny, and he jumps into several characters through the movie, and I think that's great.
That's true, actually. You do see him work. I must say, I was quite impressed that, like, because his character's a con artist, so you do see him do different performances. So that's definitely a plus for the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And Michael Caine's just very good at being that very British person.
What do you think, Brenton?
I was gonna say, like, I think what the best thing about this film is that, like, these two actors are so different, like, in a lot of ways, but yet they find this kind of chemistry and this way to complement each other. And I think it's what you guys were just saying just then, is that, like, because Steve Martin is allowed in certain moments to go full Steve Martin, and we get some of that slapstick stuff and whatnot, but Michael Caine kind of keeps it very grounded, and so they do complement each other very well, and that's really what keeps this whole film, I think, together for the most part, and keeps it so entertaining. It's funny as well, because I think the screenplay is actually not too bad. I think it's quite fun,
Yeah.
and vibrant, and it's got some good laughs in there, some good witty laughs, but then on the other end of the line, like, there's also a lot of physical comedy as well. So there's something kind of, for most people, I think, but then I can imagine as well, like you said, Carol, that people would just see Steve Martin doing some of his stuff and might be turned off by that. But for me, I love Steve Martin. So.
He's great. And I really love that they don't lean in towards the slapstick. Like, it's more situational comedy.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually prefer Michael Caine in being the straight guy. I do think Michael Caine can do comedy well. He has done. But I think in this movie, he's so suited to being that straight guy. And I also love that the rest of the casting, that the various ladies that come in and out of this movie are also they're terribly funny. They're very funny in their own rights, the roles that they play. So
They are.
I think there's a lot going on. You know, you forget that because those two really dominate the movie. But I think you think of all the side people that come through that movie as characters, and they're very, very good.
I must say, like, all the performances across the board are quite good. There's no one you're like, oh God, they're on screen. Like, you're never really rolling your eyes. Although I gotta say, the way that some of these women are written, were you ever like alienated by how kind of naive some of these girls are?
No, I know so many girls like that.
Oh, really?
I've doing.
Do you have their phone numbers?
Yeah,
Like-
really. Yeah.
Are they very rich? Do they like younger men?
Hey guys, come on! That's another podcast. That's another show. Let's not get into
Oh,
dating
no.
with Nathan, guys. Come on, let's.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but it's like a mother-son team instead of like Michael Caine?
I'm just saying that's the movie that should have been pitched today. You know what I mean? Like,
There we go.
Oh, so who would you pitch as a mother and who would you pitch as a son?
Oh, well, that's the
Wee.
question, isn't it?
That's another story.
that's the question.
But do you ever think like these girls, I think at some points I thought like, come on, you can't really be buying into this. Like for some of these girls, like it was a little bit obvious.
Are you kidding me? Absolutely. There are so many wealthy widows out there. And I think you've got to remember at the time this was made, because it's very misogynistic right now. Like, we're really typecasting that kind of woman. But
Oh, yeah.
there are and were a lot of women, especially from middle America, that are not that well traveled, that have, wealthy husbands that have passed on or they're estranged from, with a whole lot of money, and they're wanting a lot of love. And they go to the French Riviera or wherever and they get it.
Really was the eat, pray, love of its day.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of these women want to do some kind of good with their lives, or they're looking for something. So, yes, I think the characters were fun, and it's obviously not meant to be a serious
No.
but I did believe the
I
characters.
thought this was a straight drama. Oh, what?
Yeah, it's a deep
Of course you
biopic.
did,
It's Oscar bait. Oh.
you know, it was quite a beautiful film, I thought. Didn't you guys think that this film was going for something very serious?
I think, but you know what? Even though you say that in jest, genuinely at one point in the movie, I remember just feeling disgusted actually by how
Yeah,
the rich
right.
behaved, how like the filthy rich who can't afford to go to Europe like just throw away money like it means nothing. Like I do feel like underneath this film there is something to say about classism or about like the, you know, the upper class and the, you know, the what it says about generosity. I do think there's something there. I do think there is some intelligence to it.
Oh, come on. No, come on. Really? You cannot do that.
I
You
think there
cannot
was.
do
I
that.
genuinely think there was.
You cannot read into that. It's all it is superficial fun. It's a laugh. It's not.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not funny, but I'm saying when you look at how like they all throw away their money like a heart's beat, I think there is something to say about how the rich have too much money or something like that. How like they do just throw it away when you're that rich.
Obviously, I don't think that's the main point of this film is to
No.
like, you know, go into classism and sexism, but all that.
No, it's definitely not
but
the
like
main
I get Nathan's point in the sense of like in the screenplay, there's a bit of that sprinkled in there to kind of give it some flavor. But the point of this movie is just to watch these two con artists go at it and to get like that kind of masculine like competitiveness against each other and to try and one up each other at each point. And it's hilarious to see them do it. There's some just
It
honestly
is.
some of the set pieces in this movie are just so funny, like so ingenious and
And
really
still
funny.
so
Yeah.
funny. Like none of the humor doesn't feel that 80s in that sense as well. Like it feels
No.
just like
Yeah.
is it because this film's set in the 80s? Because we hear 80s music and they're dressed like the 80s, but like it doesn't really feel like we're in the 80s watching this movie.
Well, no, it's not. And also, those towns are not. They're exactly as they were now.
Because Mum, you mentioned while we were watching this film, all of us together, that you've been to some of these places, right?
And only recently. So a lot of that movie, a lot of those scenes was filmed in a town, Beaumont-sur-Mer, that on the movie it's called. It's actually Villafranchi. And I've literally sat where they've sat in the cafe, walked along that pier. The actual mansion where he lives, Michael Caine lives, is the Rothschild mansion, Villa de Rothschild. So that was shot there, and that's in Cape Ferrat. So they're all real places. None of those places have changed. Like seriously, none of those places have changed. So I was only there 2 years ago. And one of the reasons I love this movie is I love where they were filmed. I mean,
Yeah.
who wouldn't want to have that villa with that private beach? I mean, hello, and those butlers, etc. And I went there because purely because of that movie. I'd always wanted to go to that town and see if it was real, and it is.
Well, that's one of the main like positives I had about this film as well. Not just like from a comedic standpoint, but like when you watch this movie, it's quite striking because like you can just tell it's all been shot on location. It's all been shot in these real world places that are just like insanely beautiful and otherworldly. You know.
It makes you want to go to Europe, doesn't it? Like you want to just fly to Europe and just be hoodwinked by
Oh,
some
yeah.
rich person. Like, I mean, were you and Dad approached by any older men there, Mum?
Fantastic. Do you think I would
eventually,
be back here?
yeah, exactly. I'm like, Mum, why are you still not back?
Yeah. Hello, I'm a Rothschild. This is my villa. Would you like to stay? I'm like, yeah. Okay. No, of course not.
Oh, that's great.
No. But it was all around. It was seriously all around. Big money, big cars, people wearing big rocks, and there were people just like that. And the hotels were just so fabulous. So yes, it was very much that world. I felt I'd stepped
Was it that
into
thing where back in
world.
the old days, I don't know if this is a thing that still happens, but people say how like in the old days people were more trusting. So like you would have believed that you could have spotted like, you know, serendipitously bumped into a prince or something like that.
Absolutely. And how did you check? You didn't pick up your mobile phone and Wikipedia.
That's the thing, yeah.
someone,
They couldn't
so-
do that movie today. They couldn't do it at all because like if someone said they were a prince, you'd immediately Google who the prince of that country was. Like
Well, that's the interesting thing. Yeah, that's why I was surprised they did another remake of it when they did the Hustler, because I wondered how they were going to do it. I personally haven't seen that movie. I don't know if they've set it back in the 80s, because I thought that movie would always have to be set around that
Exactly,
time.
yeah.
Or earlier. And the original movie was set again around its time that it was made too, which was called Bedtime Story. And that was the one with Marlon Brando and David Niven. And I think that was pretty much set the time it was made as well. Which, again, very possible. You could go way back, but I don't think you go too much further forward with this
have you
movie.
seen the one from the 60s as well, Mum?
I haven't. No.
okay.
Sorry, it's a lie. I've seen bits of it. Years and years ago, I watched some of it, but I was too young. But I do recall I used to love David Niven, so yeah.
Because I don't know how they'd bring it up to today.
Sorry, a question. I was just going to say as well, like before we start getting into rating and stuff, a question I had was, kind of why you chose this film for us to review today, like out of interest. Like what kind of is the reason that you thought that this would be a great fit for us on the podcast and for Mother's Day?
Well, originally I was going to do a divorce movie because I thought that would be fun.
Just to clarify, my parents are still very happily married.
Yeah. I am very happily married, but I thought that the movie
What would annoy Nathan the most?
yeah, what would really upset Nathan? No, the movie I picked I found funny, but I thought no, I didn't know if you guys would. But then I thought I felt this movie was universally funny. The way they've done 3 remakes of it tells me that it's universally funny. That people they know the story by now, for heaven's sake, but they still go back and watch it because it is such a good movie. So that's the reason I just thought the 3 of us, A, Mother's Day, my choice, yay, and B, I just thought we'd all actually enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I think we have. Should we rate it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
All right. Well, who wants to start, Mum? What do you think? Would you? So the way Brent and I phrase this, is that we normally say on a Thursday night, would you put this movie on and give it a watch? That's the kind of criteria. So a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Thumbs up. Definitely give it a watch on a Thursday night.
Thumbs up. You're giving it a thumbs up, and how come? What would you say to people to recommend it?
Well, you said a Thursday night, particularly a Thursday night. You come home from work, you're getting towards the end of the week. You want a good old-fashioned laugh. This is it. Stick it on, feel good.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. What about you, Brenton?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think this is like the epitome of a Thursday night movie for something that was made in the late 80s, basically. We've watched another comedy from the 80s as well, Nathan, but I think this succeeds because it's still quite relevant to a certain extent, and the jokes have stayed funny after all that time as well. And I think honestly, like, you could play this film for like a lot of different audiences from a lot of different generations, and they'd still all get something out of it and really enjoy it. On top of that, I really like this cast. I think like the chemistry between these 2 lead actors is just like awesome, and it's worth watching for that alone, let alone all those supporting actors as well that are just doing a fantastic job. And it's a fun screenplay, and it's got lots of twists and turns, and it's perfect for this time of year as well. So my thumbs are both way up in the air.
Oi.
Yay.
I'm going to join you too, Brenton. I think, I mean, the film's not that intelligent. I think if you really dug, you could think about something you could learn from it with class. But at the end of the day, you don't watch this movie for that. You watch this movie to have a laugh. And like, this is genuinely funny. I can't remember the last time I laughed at a movie this much in a while. Like, it's great. And like, as far as like a Mother's Day movie goes, like, is this something you should watch with your mum? Like, yeah, probably. Like, it'd be great for all the mums and children. Just, get around it because you're seeing bad people do bad things. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, if you have a rocky relationship with your mother, then you're like, well, at least we're not Steve Martin. So, it puts things into perspective.
Exactly.
Well, should we spoil this movie?
Yeah, we should. Let's get into it.
You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh. I have to say, for me, to start off with, just ripping the Band-Aid off and getting straight into the juicy stuff, I have to say that there's some really good montages in this movie that are really funny. Like, so for instance, the training montage, when Michael Caine takes Steve Martin under his wing, and we have this huge montage of him learning basically how to be a gentleman, and how to go into places with decorum and to lean against a pole, or to like slick his hair back, or to how to just drink champagne. It's just hilarious, and there's no dialogue spoken. It's just these 2 actors like interacting with each other. It's one of the best scenes in the film, I gotta say.
It's so good, and also what complements it is an amazing soundtrack as well. How good is the music?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it fun and whimsical and frivolous, and it was really cute soundtrack.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do love it, bless, and it's great as well because when they're doing the montages, it's mostly Steve Martin just messing with Palpatine because Ian McDiarmid is in this movie as the butler. And he's great, isn't he?
He is.
Oh.
He is. Is this a prequel to Star Wars? Is this
I think
is this the prequel before the prequel?
This is the prequel before the prequels, where the
how the Emperor turned to the dark side. You know what I mean?
And if it is, you kind of understand why, because he definitely gets the short stick in this movie.
Yeah,
and it's so funny because
Steve Martin just tipped him over the edge. That's what happened.
Oh, he has the high ground. But it's funny because like Ian McDiarmid doesn't act that different. Like he does look quite annoyed throughout the movie, and like I'm almost waiting for him just to like go into that good. Like that kind of like, you are mine. Like you will join the scoundrel side.
He has that great line where he just leans over to Steve Martin, who's in the back seat of the car, and he says, "Welcome to hell." Like,
He's so good. I love him. Oh, it's great. He's just like shooting lightning at Steve Martin. He's like, oh no. That was the real twist all along. Do you think, guys, that this is something I found a little bit iffy with the movie. Do you think that this perpetuates a bad idea of what women find attractive in men? Because I feel like it kind of propagates this idea that women just like men with power and or wealth, and that they kind of ignore the kind of weird stuff along it.
Oh, no. See, I disagree. I think it's showing that women like needy men. You know, I think these women in particular, they've got the money, they've got the power, so to speak. You say like Michael Caine because he's cultured and nice, but also he's royalty, so they like that whole Your Highness things, particularly Americans. Like Americans gotta love a royal, right, as we know today. So that's stayed the same. But I also think that they get a great kick of doing something good with their money instead of just gambling it away at a casino. They like giving it to a cause. So I'd say these are women that like needy men. And needy young, in Steve Martin's case, attractive men. So that's why I think he played that card very well, whereas Michael Caine was more going for the cultured royal aspect of it all.
Yeah, I think that's like a really, really good take on it, because like you're right, and as we find out with the main female character in this film is that Janet is that the women in this film do have all the power, even though I think like Steve Martin and Michael Caine would like to think they have all the power, when realistically, like, you know, although these people are losing some money, like they're still incredibly powerful, and like you said, they're just like giving away like a small portion because they think it's like they're just doing their good deed for the day. It's really kind of it's really kind of interesting in that sense. And it's funny because it props like these other two guys up when really they're just kind of pathetic in a way, you know, and needy, like you said.
I think the interesting difference between those two characters too, even though Steve Martin tries to become refined, is that Michael Caine uses his money to support a lot of, you know, the gardens and culture and the arts, whereas Steve Martin just wants to blow his.
Yeah, and I really love that scene with Michael Caine. It's a great moment when he realizes she's a good person, and he's like, oh, right. And it's like, and you actually see he's actually not a scoundrel completely, and he does have this great moment of growth. I really love that. I thought that was one of the stronger scenes.
Yeah,
I agree.
Because I don't know, are you ready to talk? Could we say anything about the title just yet, or is that something?
Well, we'll get into title talk a little bit later on, but do you think he's still a scoundrel by the end of that movie?
I think, well, not only he. Remember, like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I've always thought didn't just refer to them. It also refers to the police inspector. I mean, who has a police inspector running a town like that?
Yeah, the film has a corrupt cop that it never really like dives into. It's like, wait, what? Like, what's going on?
Like, everybody's corrupt. The hotel staff are corrupt. The butler's corrupt. You know, the girl on the train's getting paid to divert. Everybody's corrupt.
Okay. If we're going to speak about corruption, can we acknowledge that, like, there was a plot to genuinely kidnap Michael Caine and send him on a plane to, like, the Honduras?
Yeah.
What?
in which Navy sailors were involved, and they were bought off by the fact that he was what was he? Michael Caine was in the end. He was a volunteer. And then he bought his way out by buying them basically like women and a place to party for the night. Like,
I love how stereotypical the sailors are as well. Like, they're in their little like white like uniforms. You think they're probably gonna like attack Steve Martin if anything. Like, it's like, oh no! It suddenly transforms into like the Navy scene from like Hail Caesar. They'll like burst into song and dance, just like Steve Martin's like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's very much boy code with the Navy.
Speaking of scenes where people are conned and are doing things against their will, let's talk about like that whole scene where Steve Martin plays Michael Caine's like special brother.
Oh my god, yeah. Jeez.
Ruprecht.
I feel like you could not do that in like 2020. You know, I feel like a movie today could maybe not have a character be that special in a film.
No, so I mean, interesting story with that.
Oh yeah,
Can I tell you a little story?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we all kind of watched it together, right, in the 80s, and the first year we watched it, the year after was the very first indie on the Gold Coast.
Oh,
and we all went out partying. Yeah, we all went out partying. About 15 of us, and we went to a restaurant which was packed afterwards. And Dad decided he was going to be Ruprecht at the table, and we put a cork in his fork, and the waitress had no idea. Everybody else at the table was just dying with laughter, and he was talking and acting and trying to eat his food like Ruprecht throughout that scene.
What?
It was hilarious. It was, and from there on in, your father, for many years afterwards, was known as Ruprecht. Yeah.
What? Why am I finding out about this now? What?
I have to say, this is the best episode we have ever done because,
it's
there's been
not.
episodes where we've looked retroactively back at our past, Nathan and I, but these are the stories that we wanted to hear today. That is absolutely hilarious. And I was going to say, that cork on the fork thing is the funniest thing, especially when Steve's got that eye patch on and he keeps, stabbing himself in the eye.
Jeez.
Oh,
But
I know.
were people genuinely treating Dad as if he was a little bit mentally challenged?
Well, yes, but they were really upset. The waitress was getting really upset because we were all laughing. And, Dad was doing a really good job of playing the role. And I think she just thought we were really mean. And we were saying, don't worry, just ignore him. He's fine. And it was really...
That explains so much over so many years. That's why Dad's a little bit peculiar.
Yeah, that was hilarious. But I just love when he sat there and he asked very, very politely, could he please go to the toilet?
And he urinates on
Yeah,
the spot.
yeah.
No, I love it most when he's smashing the vases in his bedroom. He's just knocking them down.
one at a time,
yes.
just off the shelf. One, two, and it's Ruprecht.
Jeez.
Yeah, and he's got Fanny from Oklahoma. And for years afterwards, that was just another standing joke. Oklahoma.
I can't believe that character's actually called Fanny as well. It's if the film wanted to be more misogynist, it's come on. It's a bit on the nose.
That's what I mean. That this no, but it's brilliant. She had to be Fanny from Oklahoma. What was the other one? Oh, was it Janet
Yeah.
from Omaha? Or they were all Midwest American
Jeez,
women.
it does feel very
really
1960s James Bond in the way they're so suave and the women are so just happy to be in the presence. You know what I mean? It does feel like that olden world. So
Yeah.
with how the film treats disability, it's so politically incorrect, especially with Steve Martin in his wheelchair.
I was gonna say as well, that whole plot. For me, one of the funniest scenes in the movie is the finale of kind of that subplot, which is when he decides that he needs to start walking again and get out of the chair.
Oh my
and he
goodness.
has that whole segment where he's acting like he's finally standing for the first time. And the way he walks towards this woman when he goes, go back towards the bed, because he's trying to get her into bed. And he starts doing that walk across the room. It is literally belly laugh inducing stuff. It's so funny. But for most of this film, Steve Martin's in a wheelchair. He's just being wheeled around. He's been carried around various places. He's been thrown in the back of cars.
And it doesn't get old.
No.
No, but don't you think also, to me, the very funniest was when Michael Caine turns up as the doctor, the German doctor, and then he takes that whip thing out and he's going tiggle on Michael Caine's feet trying to get him a reaction, and then he just gets further and further back whipping his leg, and you can see Michael Caine's in obvious pain.
But I can't believe, obviously in hindsight we know the Janet is the jackal, but if she wasn't and she was just some innocent woman, don't you think it'd be extremely obvious that Michael Caine wasn't a doctor if his main method of diagnosis is just to whack Steve Martin? You think is he a doctor?
Well, he's a psychiatrist, so and back in
But
the
if someone said, "Oh, my friend is a doctor," and they started whacking someone with a plant, I'd be like, "Are they though?" You'd raise some eyebrows.
well, yes, but he theoretically can't feel anything.
Yeah,
So,
he's
do
testing.
you know
He's
what I
testing
mean?
the knee. See what's up.
And they do that. They do it with a needle. You know what I mean? They run that down on with people like amputees, etc. When
But
they're
that's the thing.
paralyzed.
Steve Martin admits he's not paralyzed. He's emotionally damaged. He's choosing not to walk. You know what I mean? He said it's all emotional. So so to go from not feeling to walking,
It's psychosomatic. Yeah,
it's all
that's
over
a bit
the shop.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I think the funniest moment of that scene is when she says that hilarious line when she's like, "Well, wow, he's so moved that he's crying," and it just cuts back to Steve Martin's face, and the tears are just streaming down his face, and he's just in so much pain from what he's just been through, and then it just hard cuts to the next scene. Just brilliant stuff, brilliant editing as well in this movie. Forgot to say that before. Really good.
It is really well edited, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the way they handle the dancing story. When Steve Martin's just poking his head through the window. And he's not the dancing. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Especially when he tells that story first. It's oh, I was in this contestant competition and they were dancing and then they were making love on the floor. It's as if this would actually happen.
Yeah, they're rubbish stories, but the whole thing about the movie. I mean, who walks out into a hotel to post a letter and there's the doctor?
It's true.
Do you know what I mean? It's all
It
about
is
timing.
true.
Yeah, it's all. It's cue the next thing, but then you just love it. That's what the whole film's about.
Yeah.
It's light and and you want it to happen.
And as ridiculous as this whole thing is, as this whole plot is at the start, it kind of makes sense in the end because she's also in on it. You know what I mean? Like, because they pull out all the stops in this, and they think they're like, oh, we've got this down pat, and she's just buying everything we're doing. And yet at the same moment, they're the ones the whole film that are being played, which is a great reveal at the end of like, I love that Steve Martin gets all like aggro and angry, and yet Michael Caine just like laughs and thinks she's just like the best thing.
And it's one for the girls, one for the girls at the end, really, because all these women that have been theoretically dumb and stupid and just wealthy, and she's played that role very well and had them buy into it and then just completely flipped it. So for me, it was one for the girls.
That's a really good point, actually, because it
absolutely.
really does undo that kind of sexist kind of weaving that you think on surface level the film would be perpetuating, but it isn't. Like,
No.
I thought that was really smart. And it's funny because I forgot about the jackal. When like they mention her at the start, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, there's another con artist in town. But then the film never reminds you of it, so it kind of just fades away.
Well, that's what I love. They're so misogynistic. They just naturally assume it's a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So they let their guard down. Yeah, I love that. It's so smart. And I love it when she rocks up at the end and like, she immediately asks him to do like an Aussie accent and he just snaps into it, like no questions asked.
Yeah.
That was beautiful pausing there.
Yeah.
That pause, and you think, which way is this going to go?
As the tension ramps up at the end. But I love at the end that the three of them become like the three amigos and they go off to scam this group of people and like, and because they all have like something different to offer. And like, I think like if there was ever a sequel to this, like the three of them would make a pretty good team.
I would love to see a sequel to this.
I don't know.
Would you?
I don't know if it's necessary, but like,
Oh, all right. I'll sit on my corner in the alone then, like, since both of you don't want one. No, but I think it'd work well. Make it a team of three.
I'm open to the idea, but again,
have
I
to have
think
different
what works about
actors.
this as well. Yeah, I think this is just such a standalone. It's its own thing, and I think that's why it works really well as well. Like it's such a good self-contained story, and I tell you, this movie's so like quick as well. Like I think it goes for like an hour 50, which is just like perfect timing, perfect pacing. Like it doesn't feel too long.
So well written.
I could, can we also say how good she was
Yeah.
with Jean Hadley,
Absolutely.
who was unfortunately, she died in 2017.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she did. So,
what a shame.
yeah. So unfortunately, couldn't do a remake. But I thought, kudos to her. I thought she played her part brilliantly as well.
Oh yeah, especially with the accents at the end. Like she actually doesn't do a bad Michael Caine does a pretty good Australian accent.
Yes.
I thought it wasn't half bad. And normally as Australians we pick it up. I know he does say that, but like in general, I think he pulls it off.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm so happy that they stopped Steve Martin even trying to do an Australian accent.
Yeah.
'Cause I think he would have been so bad at it.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if on the day he was meant to be Australian, but they did a take and he just like blew it. And they're like, maybe we won't make you Australian.
So see that
Like it was in the
happening, yeah.
script, but they're like, maybe not. Steve's like, yeah, I could do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it a lot. I love as well. Also, we should give Frank Oz a shout out because I didn't know Frank Oz directed much stuff, but he did this, and I think it was actually quite well shot. Like, yeah, I don't think the cinematography was that extraordinary, but like I do think it was quite well shot, regardless.
Yeah. You didn't need great cinematography.
No, that's it. I think like the mark of like good cinematography in a film like this is that like the DOP knows what they're doing in the sense of they know that like there's a lot of like full body shots in this, so like we get to see just these actors doing what they do best, and then when we do get to see something interesting like in the framing, it's usually just like the location itself. So like the villa
Yeah.
or the ocean, and so there's this beautiful imagery. But like it was a smart decision not to do anything too fancy and just to let the camera sit on these actors and just let them go at it. You know what I mean?
And the film didn't demand that either. I'm glad it didn't like
Yeah.
linger on like the Talented Mr. Ripley or like other films set in like the Riviera, where it's like you linger on all these statues and all these like astonishing cultural shots, because it's not about that. Like we know the Mediterranean's beautiful. Like they don't do like a Call Me by Your Name where like every third shot is like just of some beautiful European architecture and the characters just admire it. Like it's more about the characters.
Yeah, it could have been shot anywhere, to be honest. It's as long as you've got those characters, it could have been shot any wealthy place in the world and it would have worked. And I think it's a good thing they didn't focus too much on that, because I think they would have taken over and it would have spoiled that really was the characters had to do all the work. And I think they did it really
But I do
well.
think you raised a good point before, Mum, where you were talking about how the film shows that archetype of the rich American in Europe. I think that plays into it a little bit. Like I don't think it'd have much resonance if it was like, someone in New York, or if it was like even reversed of like the European in LA or something like that.
Yeah, and Americans particularly, they they love meeting, as I said, a royal. Look what happened when Princess Grace married into with Monaco, and how many Americans still go there, still go to the church she got married in, and they just love that whole let's get to meet a prince kind of thing. If you've got a title, like even an English title, a lord or whatever, a sir, or you are very well regarded in America.
So, Mum, when are we getting our titles? Where's our distant relative?
Your long lost father.
Oh, now's the time to break the news, Mum.
You were really Nathan Rothschild.
Oh,
I'm
finally!
So
oh, what a special moment for
I wasn't going to tell you till you were 30.
Oh, thank you. Oh, now I can finally live up my 20s in rich splendor.
So what's interesting about my family is that if you can link my family name all the way back through the fact that like we actually had a castle and were royalty in
what?
I believe it was in
Wow.
Scotland. And so there's this castle that we had, and it's in the middle of this lake, and it's all very well fortified because we were fighting off the clans and whatnot, apparently, if you look into the history of it. And then we were the McNeils, and then we fled that land at some point in history, and
like you were there.
yeah, like hey man, and that clan basically ended up going down and then like heading through to Australia, which is how I ended up here. So like I one of my dreams is to go to my castle. My castle and go to the battlements and like have a little plastic crown on my head and walk around and feel like I'm important. One of these days I'll get over there.
Is this what you say, Brenton, when you meet our girls at bars? You're just like, oh yeah, I've got a castle somewhere. Do you want to find out? Like,
hey, maybe I'm just conning you guys right now. Who knows?
oh no, this whole episode's been a con. Well, should we get into some special segments? Special segment. Ooh, so special. So first off, I want to ask you, Brenton, which two characters in this movie do you think should have kissed?
Now, Nathan, as we were watching this film, there was a certain shot where Michael Caine and Steve Martin were eyeing each other off, but they got very close, and it was a very tense moment, and the camera was just like on their faces, like very close together. There was like a couple inches apart from their lips, and we both looked at each other and just said to each other instantly, "Special segments." Which two characters should
We
have
knew
kissed,
immediately.
There was a lot of tension there, and I'm not sure if there was some sexual tension there as well. Who knows? Anything could have happened. Literally anything happened in this film. So,
It's true. I mean, I do like that. Speaking of kissing, I do love that scene where like Michael Caine kissed Janet, and you could clearly see it was like pissing off Steve Martin.
Oh, that was hilarious. And then they'd do a little turn, and she'd face her back to him, and Michael Caine would be facing Steve. And Michael Caine's smile in this film is like hilarious when he just smiles at Steve, like, "Hey, I got you." It's like when that door opens and it's like, oh, the doctor's here, and he just opens and he just smiles at Steve. It's hilarious. It's so funny.
Yeah, I think he's got that whole denture thing going on. I feel like he was wearing dentures or something like that for the movie.
Probably.
He doesn't normally smile that cheesy. Yeah.
No. Does this smile remind you a little bit of Harrison Ford?
No, it reminds me of that guy out of Something About Mary. He wears the bad dentures. And he does that cheesy smile all the time, yeah.
It's a great smile. It is a really, really good smile. Is this probably the best we've seen Steve Martin? Like, do you like other Steve Martin movies?
I think it's called Roxanne, with the big nose, where he wears the prosthetic nose.
No.
Have you not seen that movie?
No.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
What's Roxanne?
Yeah. So he's with Daryl Hannah, I think it is. She's gorgeous blonde, and he plays sort of lover, but he's got the most hideous nose. But she loves him. It's a really bad nose. Like, you guys should check the movie out. The stills, it's bad. But he was very, very good in that. Yeah, that was in his heyday.
Yeah, I have to check it out. But I love Steve Martin. I don't know if this is the best I've ever seen him. He's really good in this, don't get me wrong. I actually think Steve Martin, low-key, is like one of the best Oscar hosts that has ever been. Like, I think
That's true.
I think he's done it twice or 3 times, and each time has just been like absolutely hilarious. It's worth looking up on YouTube. I've also got a soft spot in my heart for like that first Cheaper by the Dozen film. I remember going and seeing that as a kid and like having a good time with it and just thinking he was great in it. Yeah,
that was good.
I have a funny feeling though that movie doesn't hold up.
Oh, I do too, but he's funny. He's good.
Do you ever see him in the Pink Panther films?
I've seen one scene from the Pink Panther films and it was enough to turn me off. So
Hamburger. Have you ever seen those, Mum? Like Steve Martin in those films?
Yeah, I do. I like the original Pink Panthers, though. I think
That's what Peter Sellers, right?
they're really, yeah. No, I'm an original Pink Panther girl. Yeah, you can't beat Peter Sellers is the funniest man on the planet. Seriously, He's really good. Well, in his day, he's great.
Well, guys, that brings us to everyone's favorite segment of the show, and that is what stills this movie. Ooh, it's blinding. So in case you guys don't know, What Stills This Movie is a segment on the show where either Nathan or myself or both of us together, we select a select frame from the film in which shows an image of something that was funny in the movie, something that was poignant, something that summed it up, or just something that was really stupid, and we just had to point it out to you guys at how ridiculous that this frame exists in the movie. And today, we were all in agreement when we settled on this still that you can.
We knew it instantly.
Now you can see this still on our Instagram, you can see it on our YouTube page. So yeah, check out those places if you want to see this image. And that is of Michael Caine, who is slicking Steve Martin's hair back with the most absurd gel I've ever seen in my life. That's like bright pink. Oh, there's like fistfuls of this stuff that he's just like massaging.
He grabs so much of it.
And the horror on Steve Martin's face as this gunk's like going into his hair is just absolutely hilarious.
Is that an attractive look? Mum, as a woman, do you find men with hair gel that far back as a good look?
Ew, no, yuck, never.
Jeez, God, it's just so greasy and slimy. Like, also that much gel, it's like if anyone just touched his hair, it'd just be like rigid, you know?
Yeah, it'd be like touching a boulder or like a rock or something. You know what I mean? Like you could probably like knock on that, it would make like a sound. You know what I mean?
I think we gelled your hair like that once, Nathan.
Yeah, I remember when I went to the Hunger Games movie premiere. We did.
Yeah,
but
we gelled your hair like that. Yeah, and it took a ton of gel. It was pretty thick, though. You've got to put a lot on.
You know, the talk show host. Yeah, Sally Tucci, yeah. So it is him, so there's a reason for it. But in my casual life, good Lord, I would not. I use a little bit of gel to hold up the hair sometimes, but nothing on the scale of that. Like,
maybe we should try it. Go for a night out and see.
No. Yeah, do that in the bar. Let's just see what people think.
Yeah. Don't mind us. Just doing our hair.
Yeah. Good luck with that, boys.
Thanks, Mum. Well, hey, let's look at this film's poster. Brenton.
Yes.
Let's look at this film's poster.
But is it art?
So this is the segment where we look at the movie's poster, and this week, what do you think about this poster, Mum and Brenton?
I love it.
I do too. I think this is pretty much perfect for this film. I think I don't know any way that I could really improve on this. I love that we have like the backdrop of like the ocean, and like those umbrellas are kind of like really kind of aesthetically pleasing. But then of course we got the two dirty rotten scoundrels themselves just like in the frame with their champagne glasses smiling at the camera. Look, there's that Michael Caine smile we were talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Steve Martin poised beautifully.
Yes.
You know, and holding his fingers in just the correct manner, holding the champagne glass. I think it's absolutely perfect. With his hair slicked back, with the hair.
There we go. It's true. I also love how bright the poster is. Like the coloring is quite good.
So I don't know if somewhere we've got a shot of the original Bedtime Story poster, but what I was going to say before is that Michael Caine has actually gone to great lengths to pay homage to Steve Niven, particularly with that little moustache. So he put that was a classic Steve Niven moustache. That was kind of his signature look, and his hair slipped back. So I kind of think it was I honestly believe it was Michael Caine paying homage to him through this movie. And if you go back to Bedtime Story and how David Niven's character was, he looked exactly like that. Yeah, exactly. You could put them side by side.
I got to say as well, with the poster, I love the suits, Brenton. Do you want to own that Michael Caine suit there?
You know, for me personally, I don't know if I could pull that suit off. Like that's a very white suit, and that's okay.
We're both already white enough.
So maybe I think I'd stick with Steve's suit on the left there. If it was me
pretty
personally.
Good suits in this movie.
Yeah, but hey, the fashion sense in this film's pretty good. Like there's some quality suits.
Not gonna lie, I would want that Michael Caine suit. That is a cool suit. Maybe not the tie, but the suit definitely.
What about the shoes? Would you wear the shoes?
I would. God, they're in the most horrendous sandals the whole movie. No, definitely not.
Yeah, I don't actually like really how Michael Caine dresses a lot in this movie, especially with that big cardigan thing. I think that looks really a bit granddaddy. You know, he's trying to pull off that stately gentleman thing, but yeah, it's the old granddad grey cardigan. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, maybe that's his shtick. Maybe he does like being the older bloke. You know, he does call the town that home for retirees. So.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to pull off that stately look. But I wouldn't be buying a white suit, Nate.
Oh, okay. Well, there goes that pipe dream. Thanks, Mum.
Take it from a girl's point of view. Nah.
Noted.
Well, title talk.
Fool is the title.
Were there dirty, rotten scoundrels in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels?
Mate, I think we've established there were so many Dirty Rotten Scoundrels in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. They were just everywhere to be seen.
Yeah, they were pretty dirty. They were constantly looking up girls, and they that. I guess they're rotten because they are scamming them. So yeah, I would call them a scoundrel. I'm very surprised that this movie held back from saying the title in the movie. I thought at one point a girl was going to shout, "You're just dirty, rotten scoundrels," but thankfully they held back on it.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great title. I think it's what somebody, a wealthy person would call someone who did that. A dirty rot. He's a scoundrel. A scoundrel was very much the word used.
Oh, you naughty scoundrel to get off my
And the fact that
lawn.
they weren't just a scoundrel, they were a dirty, rotten scoundrel. And I love that. And I think even she's a dirty, rotten scoundrel. You know, I think
Absolutely,
you're right, they all
she's
are.
the third surprise.
Absolutely.
Scoundrel.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect title as well. Like it sticks in the mind. It just works.
It's also much better. What's the original called again?
Bedtime story.
Why was it called Bedtime Story?
No idea. No
This is
idea.
way better. Could you imagine if this film was called Bedtime Story? Jeez,
I
like
know.
this is much
Lame.
better of a title.
And I think it's a better title than Hustlers as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, scoundrel's such a beautiful word. I wish we still used it a lot in our, vocabulary. You know, so you see someone and they're a scoundrel. What a scoundrel. I love that word.
He's a true scoundrel. Yeah.
I guess I know what's going to be happening at the next family dinner.
It's a beautiful word. Yeah, look out, Nathan, you scoundrel.
Oh no, this is turned on me.
Nathan, stop being a scoundrel. Stop that.
That's what we should have called this podcast, Scoundrel Banter.
Exactly.
Classic scoundrel banter.
banters.
Yeah. Next week we might have a new title, guys. We'll keep you updated. But
Oh,
I think
no.
it's time, guys. I think it's time to pass that power to the people.
Pass it here.
What?
The power to the people.
So here we go, guys. We've passed the power to the people, and the critics on the tomato meter gave this an 89%. 89%, that's pretty good. I'd have to say that's pretty positive. With an audience score of 84.
Yeah, people love this movie, which is good. You know, I'm glad it hasn't alienated a lot of people.
I'm just really happy that on our Mother's Day episode that we all came to the same, consensus and that we all voted positive today. We all unleashed the optimist in us all today, Nathan.
It's about family coming together.
Yeah, I'm proud of you, boys.
Yeah, Mum, because you were quite upset when Brenton didn't like the castle, weren't you?
I was so upset that Brenton didn't like the castle. I wanted to fly to Sydney and see Brenton and find out why he didn't like. I was yelling at the podcast as it was being, broadcasted in my car. I
Oh.
was listening and I'm like, no, Brenton, no, you must like the castle.
But why? Why? Like, now that you're with Brenton, why should he love the castle?
Oh, because I just think it's a quintessential Australian movie. It's kind of like saying you won't sing the national anthem. Like the castle to me is.
All right, controversial team. I'm not a big fan of our national anthem as far as...
Okay, well, Waltzing Matilda. Let's just say you don't like.
There we go.
Yeah.
Much better
Yeah,
tune.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just think it's the lines that have come out and held from that movie all through the decades. I think is brilliant. I think it was such a great movie on so many levels, and it holds up well today. So yeah, I guess it's like a favorite food for me. You can't talk, and I'm always surprised when people don't like the same food. So yeah.
I'd have to say I still disagree, but that's okay. We'll agree to disagree. I'd say I'll tell you my favorite line from the film that I still use like in like my vocabulary like during the day is I'll sometimes say it's the vibe of the thing. Like for me, that's the funniest line in the castle for sure. That whole courtroom sequence for me is just like hilarious.
Oh, see, mine is like, well, that's going straight in the pool room. When
Yeah.
someone just gives you that gift at Christmas, that's going straight to the pool room.
And I've been saying for years,
Absolutely.
Mum, we don't have a pool room.
I know. It's where all Nathan's presents are.
Oh no, Mum, don't put me in the pool room.
You scoundrel.
Oh no. But what are the people saying, Brenton?
Well, the people are saying, Elliot Panic is saying from Common Sense Media, Martin and Kane scam women, not for young kids. 3 out of 5 stars.
Do you think kids would enjoy this movie? How young could you go with it?
Well, I'm just trying to think
No.
if there's anything like I think some of it might go over their heads. To be honest, like young kids.
I think the Ruprecht scenes I'd enjoy because it's just men being silly, grown men being
Yeah.
silly. So if you've got a young child, that's funny. I don't
Yeah.
think the con part, that sort of humour, would go down well though. But I think just the funny, they love adults being silly. So I think, yeah, in that sense.
It is amazing how clean it is as well. There's no swearing in the movie at all. So like that could be more appealing for children as well.
Sure. Yeah. Good family movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Great family movie. Paul S. Gave it 3.5 stars and wrote, "There are definitely amusing parts in this movie, but I do find all the characters to be so excessively unrealistic that it's hard to suspend disbelief with this movie. I realize it's a comedy, but it doesn't work well with me that people are so absurdly gullible."
Well, Paulie, I gotta say, mate, I disagree. You know, like I think as we've established, because we've kind of had this conversation today on the show. I think people are more like this than what you may realize. You know, and especially this class of people and people at this time. So I think it is realistic in that sense. Yes, there's some slapstick comedy. Yes, there's some ridiculous circumstances. I mean, it's a comedy film. You know what I mean? Like you kind of know what you're getting into in that sense. So yeah,
I think Paul's just overthinking it. You know, come on, Paul, you're overthinking it.
Paul.
I understand Paul a little bit. I kind of get what he's saying. But yeah, I agree. You can't go into this like really thinking women are going to behave like this in real life.
No. And so Karen S., she says, unlike many 80s movies, this film has held up over the decades. Steve Martin and Michael Caine are both great in this film. Lots of laughs. So go Karen. Yeah, she loved it.
Hey, Karen, I agree with you, mate. Like, for me, that's the biggest thing about this is that, like, the comedy itself has just, like, lasted over so many years, which is just, like, the staple of something that is, will last, you know what I mean?
Can we just pause and have a look down at SC, who wrote 2 years ago, "I know a few scoundrels myself." I thought that was a good comment.
I love that. Oh, could you imagine?
Okay.
Just like you turn to your father during the movie, like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think you drew attention to that because you might have written that comment a few years ago in reference to Nathan on the show today.
Oh no, Brenton, I'm not a scoundrel. Oh, and lastly, Shahari GKS wrote on YouTube, "Well, Alfred was a con back then. I wonder how Bruce Wayne still would not notice about this." This would be great. Could you imagine if this was connected to the Dark Knight? Just suddenly it's like, "Master Wayne, if you want to get the Joker, just put on a show."
Hey, it could make sense, you know what I mean? It's like, I buried enough members of the Wayne family, along with all those people I conned back in the day.
Oh, that's how the Wayne family got its rich money, just Alfred's like conning wealth.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh.
Well, guys, that is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and our Mother's Day special.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was a
Yeah.
fun conversation, I think, you know? And what a great film to do that with today. I thought that was awesome.
Tell you what, we've got some Dirty Rotten Scoundrels in this room, am I right? Like, is this the new cast?
Well, go mothers. That's all I want to say. Go mums. You rock. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, mothers who have listened.
A big shout out to you, Mum. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. You know, I mean, it was against your will. You're still
Absolutely.
tied up, but you know, it's great. You've been a good sport about it.
Will you let me out now? Please?
Oh, just one more minute as we thank our
Almost.
our lovely listeners out there, especially if you're mothers. Happy Mother's Day, guys! If you want to, it would really help us out if you would subscribe to us on the podcast app, to us on YouTube, and all of our other outlets, and send us a review as well. Like, let us know what you think about the show. Tell us what your thoughts on this movie, and that would be absolutely fantastic. But for now, guys, thanks again to Carol for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Maybe this can be more of a permanent thing. I don't know. Who knows?
No, it's not going to be a permanent thing. Listeners, I'm putting the foot down. This is a one-time thing. It's not an annual thing. This will never happen again.
Nathan and I actually agree on this. No.
All right.
Bye.
Hey, well, wait a minute. What's all that in Mum's handbag, Brenton? Is that $50,000? Where did this come from?
Wait. Is this a calling card? Is she the...
Bye, boys.
Oh no, Mum's the jackal.